Have you watched the first season of Vikings Valhalla? Well, if you have, then you might be wondering about the real-time history behind this show. Is it based on true facts and events? This video is the answer for that. Today, we will be telling you about the real history behind this show and what points it addresses. Welcome to the Vikings Code, where we share authentic information regarding Vikings. Before we start, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, and let's get into it. So Vikings Valhalla features a new group of Vikings, like explorers Leif Erikson and Freydis Eriksdottir, as well as the warriors Harald Sigurdsson and King Knut. Both Leif and Freydis were the children of Eric the Red, the man who established the first European colony in Greenland, and also the first European explorer to set foot on North America's eastern shore. There are a lot of interesting Vikings in history, and this show just features them. One of the best was Harald Hardrada. Harald would have walked at least 2/3 of the circumference of the 11th century Viking world, if it were a circle that crossed 4 continents. At the very least, the King of Norway sailed from his home country to Kiev and Constantinople to Sicily and back, before he died in 1066. Harald was defeated by Harold Godwinson, the English king. It's not just the real-life stories that can be used for historical fiction. The new Netflix show Vikings Valhalla imagines what might have happened if Harald, played by Leo Sutter, were best friends with the Norse explorer Leif Erikson, Sam Corlett, and the lover of Leif's sister, Freydis Eriksdottir, Frida Gustafsson. Actually, Leif died when Harald was about 5 years old, and Freydis was about the same age as her brother, so the whole thing is just a fantasy. Still, it's a great way to tell a story. In 793, the Vikings raided a monastery on the island of Lindisfarne, and we saw that in the previous show Vikings. The History Channel show Vikings ended up running for 6 seasons, and Valhalla is a spin-off. The first one was supposed to tell a story about how the Viking world was made. This one is supposed to show how things changed in 1066. Its name is based on Valhalla, the Hall of Slain Warriors in Norse mythology that is led by the god Odin. And know this, just like Vikings, Valhalla isn't really a history show at all. Instead, the writers combined characters, historical events, and stories from different sources and time periods to make the show more exciting and keep the story moving. It worked well for the first show, and it works well for this one too. There are a lot of historical facts that are wrong, but the show doesn't really say that. And now that it's not on the History Channel, it's less likely to confuse people. The best part of Valhalla put the medieval Scandinavians in what Nair Otau Gracia, a scholar of medieval literature at the University of New Mexico, calls the global North Atlantic. This is a diverse, complicated, and interconnected network of cultures that doesn't look like a single white Viking world. The show is set in England and Norway in the early 11th century. At the time, Norway was ruled by one person. There was a lot of fighting between small kingdoms, and the kingdoms were not very stable. And between 970 and 1035, the neighboring kingdom of Denmark took over parts of Norway, relying on local nobles known as jarls to run the country for it. This added to the internal problems that Norway was having. A lot of people in the region had small-scale religious conflicts, but full-scale religious war was very rare in the area. In England, on the other hand, Saxon kings had only limited power over the great nobles of the land. People from Denmark who lived on the island during waves of Danish invasions of England had a hard time getting along with the Saxons and other regional powers. It all starts with Harald leaving a party in England to meet his brother Olaf, Jonas Hakar Johannesson, and start their fight to reclaim the Norwegian crown from the Danish king Knut, Bradley Freegard. On the same night, English King Athelred the Unready, Bosco Hogan, orders a lot of Danes in England to be killed. This is called the 1002 St. Brice's Day Massacre, and it happened in real life. There is a good chance that the real attack was a response to the Danish raids. The show, on the other hand, suggests that Athelred is trying to get rid of the island's different people. In response to the massacre, the show's version of Nut puts together a combined Norwegian and Danish army. Harold's differences with Nut are put on hold until he joins the Danish army to fight back against those involved in the massacre. It's a story that doesn't actually happen. Nut's father, Sven Forkbeard, was the one who invaded England in 1003. It wasn't until the death of Sven in 1014 that Nut became the ruler of the country. Harold wasn't even born until 1050. This isn't the first time Valhalla has mixed the past to make a plausible dramatic story. It's easy for people to figure out that Nut is the Viking who will one day build a great northern empire. Olaf will be killed and later be made a saint to make his brother Harald king. And in this mix, the writers throw in a small group of Greenlanders, including Leif and Freydis. Norwegians were very connected to the North Atlantic world, but Greenlanders were far away even by Viking standards. They had no real role in the politics of the time. The group comes to Norway where Nut is putting together his army in search of revenge. After they finish their mission, Leif joins Nut's army and becomes friends with Harold. Freydis decides to stay behind in the great Norwegian port city of Kattegat. According to the Viking sagas, Leif was born in Iceland, raised in Greenland, and somehow ended himself in Vinland on the coast of North America in the year 1000. The Greenlander's sister Freydis appears in both versions of their journeys to North America, when she joins a further expedition following her brother's original journey. In one story, she personally uses an axe to kill the women among her enemies. With her bare breast and sword flat, she repels an assault by indigenous residents of the area while insulting her other soldiers' masculinity for fleeing away. This is a classic Viking invasion plot, with epic battles, backstabbing, politics, and even a little sex. In this show, we learn something new about Freydis and her adventures in Kattegat. Caroline Henderson, a black actress, plays the mythical pagan ruler of Kattegat, Jarl Hakon. She is shown as knowledgeable and kind, although Hakon's dominion is far from a simple paradise. Kattegat opens with a scene depicting a market where enslaved individuals of different ethnicities are being auctioned. Merchants of various kinds market their goods to Hakon, and she takes Freydis around the city. Hakon explains her African Scandinavian ancestry to Freydis in a matter-of-fact way as the light shines down on the brightly colored garments. As Harold and Leif conquer England and Valhalla, a religious conflict breaks out in Scandinavia between Christians headed by Olaf and pagans led by Hakon. The region's religious landscape underwent a gradual transformation, but the sharp distinctions shown on the screen aren't historically accurate. Most of the time, religions coexist peacefully, with a steady shift towards Christianity. When rivals for a monarch had conflicting religious identities, bloodshed may break out. A holy battle between Christians and pagans is aimed in the series, but it does so while acknowledging the complexities of religious life at the period. However, even Olaf makes it apparent that he wants Kattegat to remain an open port city that serves as a gateway to the world, and he even joins forces with Christian terrorists, berserkers who slaughter pagan pilgrims, butcher and decapitate whole towns, and burn temples. There are certain important issues in the Viking world that are just lightly touched upon in Vikings Valhalla. Simplistic white supremacist narratives about the North are challenged by the show. Also, the show does not shy away from addressing the ways in which encounters between various groups may lead to both tolerance and cultural transformation. And this sums up our video. We hope you have enjoyed it, but if you thought this show is totally based on facts, well, it's not. It's very much fantasy and far away from reality. So what are your thoughts about this? Let us know in the comments section. We will keep bringing you such interesting videos, so stay tuned with us, and we will see you in the next one.